Am I in the centre? No, I am not. Am I now in the centre? I think I am. Hi, hello, good morning, afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Let's talk cannibalism. Let's talk about the time the Dutch ate their Prime Minister. Obviously, when you clicked on this video, you saw the title, you saw what it was about, but I do very quickly just want to give a warning. We are going to be talking about, obviously, cannibalism, someone being brutally murdered, war, slavery, and anything of the like. So please, if these things bother you, do click away. This is not the video for you. But either way, we pursue. Now, in today's video, we're going to be talking about one specific man, Johan de Witt. While obviously the part that the juicy details come into play, the cannibalism, the murder, obviously the downfall. What the hell? Anyway, the downfall. We're obviously going to talk a little bit about the history of this man. Now, who was Johan de Witt? Johan de Witt was born on 24th of September in 1625. Born second son to Anna van der Corput and Jacob de Witt. His older brother was Cornelis de Witt, who is also going to be very important in this story later on, but he was 2 years older than him. Now, Johan de Witt grew up in a very well-respected family. He was a smart man with incredibly prominent figures in his family towards the 7 provinces of the Netherlands. His father had been elected mayor 6 times for Dordrecht. On his mother's side, there was a military man who protected Steenwijk in the 80-year-long war. And his uncle himself was Grand Pensionary before he was. So obviously his upbringing was filled with riches. As I mentioned, he was incredibly smart and he drew a special interest in mathematics, even continuing to publishing many studies, and with this study he became one of the founders of modern day insurance mathematics, which, fuck that guy. Honestly, screw him. I hate insurance. That's a lie. I'm good at insurance law, I'm good at tax law. But as much as he enjoyed mathematics, just like his father, he went on to pursue law at Leiden University, which he eventually got a doctorate in. Now, it was very common for rich kids around that time, after they finished their studies, they went on to go abroad, discover Europe, visit some women. I don't know. I don't know what they did in that time. Point is, he went on to travel into Europe, to France and other countries. After he came back, he sat down, became a lawyer, got married to Wendela Bicker, and became the father to 8 children, 6 girls, 2 boys, and which 3 of the girls had died at a very early age. R.I.P. Oh God, there's a hair in my mouth. Ugh. Now, before we get into all the juicy details that everyone wants to talk about, the cannibalism, I kind of want to talk, obviously, because he became a Grand Pensionary, I do want to talk about the economic and political state of the world. Oh well, this time specifically about the Netherlands. This was in the 17th century. Now, obviously, for the people who know anything about history, these were very prominent years for the Netherlands, for the 7 provinces. After the 80-year-long war just ended, obviously the revolution came, and Spain's grip on Europe has come to a halt. The 7 provinces of the Netherlands, specifically Amsterdam, became the worldwide economic centre, which lasted for a good 100 years. Now, as I've said before, these were very prominent years for the Netherlands, which is now commonly known as the Golden Age for us. Aside from this, the entire Netherlands kind of resided into poverty if you weren't on one of the big bitches. And obviously during this time, as I mentioned before, slavery was huge, racism was huge, everything else that you can name, the treatment of people, classism, everything was just bad. And especially slavery in Curacao. So, and during the time that he became Grand Pensionary was quite big. I'm not going to go too in depth about this because I think it speaks for itself, but you cannot have a history lesson, not a history video or anything, without mentioning racism and slavery. It's practically impossible in any country, really. So I do want to like mention that kind of and add that onto the story, because I do think it's important to mention, but not prominent to the story that we're going to talk about, which is obviously cannibalism. Now, obviously, having mentioned this, like I said, during the time that Curacao became a prominent slave trade place, Johan de Witt became Grand Pensionary, also commonly known as Prime Minister of the 7 provinces of the Netherlands in 1953. 1953? The Grand Pensionary and Prime Minister around 1953. This was smack dab in the middle of the First English-Dutch War. Now, Johan was a diligent Grand Pensionary who achieved actual greatness and better than the people who came before him. He was also an avid supporter of Oranje Nassau, which was the royal family of the Netherlands, and he went on to pay off, or at least he tried to pay off, all the debt of the 80-Year War, while supporting and helping further the reign of the naval fleet in the Netherlands. In 1668, which is only 4 years before he died, he went on to make the Triple Alliance with Sweden and England, which really was just a devious plot of all these 3 countries to make this sort of alliance that if France were to ever attack them, they would help each other, which is currently, what's that called? The NAVO? The NATO? I don't know what it's called. That if France were ever to attack them, they would help each other out. Now, like I said, this was a scheme. It was a plot. I specifically use the word scheme because this truly was just a cover-up for them to attack Spanish-Dutch. Now, Spanish-Dutch is nowadays Belgium, the Netherlands, and to make sure that France tried to take reign over Spanish-Dutch, which then allowed the Netherlands, English and Sweden to attack France. So in reality, they just wanted a good reason to attack France. As you can imagine, did not go well. France at the time was definitely in reign of Europe. They were one of the most powerful nations, powerful countries at the time. Yeah, the shit didn't go well. But Karel the second. Not really, he's an important figure, but not really to this story, so I'm not going to explain who he was. But he went behind de Witt's back, talked to Lodewijk XIV, who was at the time the, I don't know, was he the king? Who was in reign, France at the time, and told him about the scheme that these 3 countries were having, the Triple Alliance. And Lodewijk went on to then make a secret alliance with England to attack the 7 provinces of the Netherlands. And you've guessed it, there is once again a war with England and the Netherlands. And somehow in every war France is involved as well, so I don't know what that is about either. This happened during the year 1972, which is also the year that Johan and his brother died. The country was again obviously losing, just as they had done during the First English-Dutch War. Now there's a saying around this time that goes that the people were unreasonable, the country was helpless, and the government was desperate. Now obviously this saying makes a lot more sense in Dutch. It goes, I need to translate this to make sense. The people were redeloos, the country was radeloos, and the government was radeloos. So it makes a lot more sense if you hear it in Dutch. But that was a saying that was very prominent around this time. Obviously, the country was losing. Again, they just don't have the militia and the power to stop England and France. Obviously, being huge countries with great militia for years, like we know the history of these countries. And so the States General of the Netherlands decide to make peace negotiations with these countries against Johan de Witt, his wishes. But the country and the people didn't really see it as that, and they saw it as an act of betrayal on Johan's side. Murder attempt number 1. On the 21st of July, they attacked Johan de Witt. He was out for a stroll, he was out doing his thing, and 4 men jumped him. Now they first hurt him in the neck, which made him fall down and hurt his head. They then went on to stab him twice with a knife, which he survived. And not even an hour later, his brother, Cornelis de Witt, went on to get attacked as well. Again, a failed attempt, but he ended up in bed for 14 days, which doesn't sound that much, actually, especially for that time. But moving on, first attempted murder. Cornelis, his brother, like I said before, important mention. He then, 2 days later, Cornelis, his older brother, was indicted to have plotted to kill the prince/king of the Netherlands, Wilhelm. Was that third? What really happened was that he told someone he would give him 30,000 to kill the prince/king, and then went on to admit that, get him indicted, and then they arrested Cornelis. Now Cornelis obviously denied the charges, and he was like, it was the opposite way around. I obviously refuse. I'm an avid supporter of Oranje Nassau, just like my brother. No, obviously this didn't happen, but his sentence, at first they wanted to give him the death sentence. That didn't really fully go through. Point is, he was in jail. The man was in jail. Here we get to the point of where the brothers were obviously lynched and murdered and eaten. And while Cornelis, his older brother, was in jail, Johan got a message that his brother wanted to speak to him. We all know what that meant. Now, while Johan tried to get out of the jail half an hour later, he couldn't. There were massive crowds forming around the jail, and while the cavalry tried to keep everybody safe inside of the prison, and obviously the crowd outside, they also got a false message from their commander, stating that farmers were plundering outside. The guy, the supposed hitman that Cornelis had hired, then went on to scream that he was freed of all charges and that the brothers had plotted to kill the prince, Willem II, and that this was the highest form of betrayal, that the bystanders should attack. They went on to drag both brothers outside of the jail, dragging them across the floor, hitting them. They then went on to, again, gory stuff is coming up, please watch out. They went on to put a spike into Johan's head, then shoot him through the back of his head, hang them both upside down, completely undress them, castrate them. They cut off their ears, fingers, nose, lips, tongue. Am I missing anything? Fingers, have I said those? Then ripped open their body and cut out their intestines. And then, according to eyewitness and writer Joachim Oudaan, they went on to either sell these body parts or eat them. If I could give you a reason as to why they decided to eat these brothers, I would tell you I have no idea. But they did. They ate parts of the brothers according to Joachim. We're not entirely sure if this is true, but obviously that is how the story goes. Now, 2 things are important to mention. Supposedly, they cut out the heart as well, which had been shown for many years, and Now, apparently, we're not 100% sure if these are truly the body parts of the brothers, but in Haag's Historical Museum, there is a finger and a tongue which, according to them, belonged to one of the brothers, which you can nowadays still see. Disgusting. But either way, this wraps up the short historical history of that time that the Dutch people truly took the sentence, eat the rich, very literal. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed the short little historical lesson, obviously you can find the history of this a lot more in depth, especially Dutch history around this time is incredibly interesting. Please do not take everything that is said on the internet for 100%. We don't know everything that happens. This is just as much as we can find. I thought it'd be fun, a little introduction. Obviously talking about my own history of my country. And yes, please do not eat the rich. Please don't.